D&D basically cured my art block, and if you're struggling creatively, you should play too. So I used to be a really creative kid with a lot of different stories in my head and a lot of different characters just bouncing around in there. That was when I was a kid. People thought that I had like an overactive imagination, and somewhere along the lines of like 17, 18, it started to die down, which is normal. It's not that bad. Usually my creativity swelled with like hyperfixations that I had. So when I hyperfixated on Portal, that's when fan fiction started getting really big with me, and same with Black Butler and things like that. Homestuck is when I started drawing. Usually my artistic ability waxes and wanes with the hyperfixations that I have. But with D&D, I feel like that kind of changed the game. And this could be me being completely wrong, and it's just a really, really long hyperfixation. But I found that there are so many different things that just scratches my brain when it comes to D&D. Like, yes, there's the whole collaborative piece with you and your friends, and you guys are all making a story where there's conflict and resolve, hopefully, and it's just a really cool thing to do with your friends, and so you're like happier doing it. But then there's also the fact that D&D kind of reawakened my love for character creation. And not just character creation, character design and like fleshing them out and, you know, just making them a three-dimensional character. The characters that I've created for D&D feel so much more real to me than the characters that I've created for different stories. The characters that I've created for different stories are just that to me, characters. Meanwhile, D&D, the characters that I have for these campaigns just feel so three-dimensional, so real to me. Not necessarily as like they're a real person, but like they feel more realistic because you're sitting there and you're role-playing as them, and you don't have time to think about your responses, not a lot. So you have to be like, okay, this is immediately how they would react. This is their knee-jerk reaction. This is what they're thinking right now. And you have to get into their headspace. And it's so nice. It's so nice to work that part of my brain again. And I adore it. There's also the aspect of the stories. I mostly like to deal with sequential media, whether that's animation or animatics or comics. Things that have a story. Like, I love illustrations and things like that, but I find more joy in creating a piece that tells a story, which is why I love animatics and comics and things like that. That's why I'm drawing a comic for this one right now. But I love, one, having these scenarios that come up that I'm usually not really expecting at all. I'm at the mercy of the DM, and the DM is throwing situations at us and we have to react in character. I love that. And then it kind of breeds this environment, for me at least. The scenarios that happen in-game lead me to go to players outside of the game and be like, hey, what if this happened with our characters? And then boom, overnight, I wrote a 2,000 word one-shot of something that happened with two different characters. And it could be canon or it could be just like musings and things like that, but it's made me so much more creative than how I used to be. I think I just didn't have a lot of ideas when I was younger, and so then I stopped thinking that I was creative when that's not the case. I've had stories in my head and I've thought about scenarios and things like that. I just never had the outlet for them, I guess. And so now with D&D, I'm able to, if I don't know what to draw, I can draw my characters. If I don't know what stories to write or what comics to write, I can make a comic about my characters, or I can make an animatic about my characters, and I feel like I'm doing something with my creativity. Like, I want to draw so much now because of these characters that I've created and because of the scenarios that they've been put in, which is amazing to me because that's not something that used to happen, at least with the role plays that I used to do, like on Discord or Skype or things like that, like the text-based role plays. I used to do that so much, and I would draw sometimes, but it was never something that I was like proud of, or it would be like a special occasion, you know? But almost every week I find myself drawing one of my D&D characters. Hell, there's one of the sketchbooks in my sketchbook tour that I did for my 1,000 subscriber special. That sketchbook was technically it was just 3 of my D&D characters. It was my sketchbook that I had dedicated to D&D that I would have out while I was playing, and I would doodle in, so then I could do something with my hands. And I filled that thing. That was the first sketchbook that I've ever filled, completely, cover to cover. That is insane to me. As somebody who has trouble finishing things, the stories that I've made for D&D, the characters that I've made for D&D, everything like that, I've actually wanted to finish them, which is awesome. It's made me find the joy in the things that I do again. Half of the things that I am drawing in my speed paints are D&D characters. Fanfiction pet peeves. That's my D&D character Levine from 4 years ago. This comic that I'm doing right now is a Star Wars D&D campaign with an NPC and my character and like their backstory. I think that I'm going to dedicate an entire speed paint where I draw every single one of the D&D characters I've ever had, and I talk about them, because I could literally talk about them for forever, because I love them so very much. I mean, there are some that aren't necessarily my favorites, like my first few ones, where I didn't necessarily have any idea what I was doing, so they don't really have a very fleshed out personality, and they don't really have a backstory, and so they're just a design, but I like their design. But yeah, I am so in love with D&D, and I love the fact that I'm able to draw more because of D&D. Yeah, if you are struggling creatively, you should consider playing D&D, because if you're having trouble coming up with characters or coming up with scenarios, boy howdy, let me tell you, the scenarios that come up in D&D are great brain food. It's just helped me work my muscles in a way that I hadn't in a very long time. And it may not help you, but it helped me. And you should consider playing D&D. Anyways, this wasn't necessarily an advice video. This was more my experience playing Dungeons and Dragons, the love that I feel for art now that I have something that works me creatively. Consider playing D&D, because I love it. And if you're playing with the right people, you will love it too. Oh, and I didn't even do an intro for this one. Hi, I'm Ash. I do speed paints, I do art-related videos, and I will talk about internet subculture sometimes, and post some shenanigans. So if that's something that you like to see, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell. That way you can see when I post and join our notification team. We're tiny, but we are mighty. And if you play D&D, go ahead and drop in the comments your character. I want to know about your characters. Drop your D&D characters in the comments, their class, their race. Just tell me about them, you know? I love to hear about people's D&D characters. And maybe tell me what your favorite class and subclass is. Right now, I'm playing a Circle of the Moon Druid, and honestly, I haven't had as much fun with any other class than I have with Circle of the Moon Druid. I can turn into a bear, and I'm like level 3. It's great. Anyways, I'm gonna leave that here. So yeah, see you guys next week. Love you guys bunches and bunches. Bye-bye.